Hi, welcome back to my, an appropriate name for this might be my productivity blog. I've seen a lot of people, making videos recently that are about productivity and how to be more productive, how to get things shipped, how to move forward with your projects. And I've been trying to watch some of my older videos and kind of like see themes that are coming out of those videos to see if I can like expand on those topics more. So today I want to dive into user interviews and the design process. So you might be thinking like, why is this important? Like how do you get started? Or let's even go back one step because so for some context, I've been like exploring poverty problems. If you know anything about poverty, poverty is really complex. So it's not like you can say like, oh, a person just doesn't have any money and that's like the end of their poverty. Like there's a lot of factors. There's different ways that you could be poor. You could have housing issues, like you might live in dilapidated housing. Maybe you live in a community or a neighborhood that is segregated, isolated, or like ill-equipped. Like a lot of the you can call them like projects in New York City. The people who own those buildings, they don't conduct regular maintenance. So the apartment managers who own the buildings, they don't like fix them. So if you think about something in your apartment that might break, if no one comes to fix it, and that happens like every year, like month after month, soon everything's gonna be broken. And that's just a whole cluster of problems, right? And so it kind of gets to the point where really you need to tear the building down and like just live somewhere else. But if there is nowhere else to live and you can't afford to move somewhere else, and maybe you have like a housing voucher, do you see how that's like a whole bunch of problems? And all of those need to be solved, but all of those might have very different solutions depending on who is like solving this problem and the way that they understand the problem. This is where like user interviews come in. So because I've been working on understanding poverty problems, I did 3 weeks of sprints, all related to different issues. So the first issue that I explored was how to support the trans community of color with mental health. The second sprint that I worked on was how to support returning citizens or people who are coming home from jail and what that looks like. The third issue that I unpacked was exploring literacy and really like illiteracy in America and really in the inner city and how that's related to students and communities of color. And the fourth issue, though I didn't do a formal week-long sprint on it, I have been exploring it in more depth, and maybe you haven't, but I did make some content around food access in New York City and the food access or mutual aid ecosystem surrounding food. So those are like 4 really different areas. If you think about, I'm specifically looking at how these issues are related to people living in New York City and the departments that work on those issues. Those are all very different departments, right? And so if you think about research groups, those groups are very different, right? Like when I'm thinking about returning citizens, that might be like a department who's working on criminal justice reform and policing, right? If I'm thinking about literacy, that's like the Department of Education. If I'm thinking about food access, that could be like the Department of Agriculture. I think in New York they have a Department of Nutrition. That could also be very related to developmental health or something around like maternity or motherhood. And if I'm thinking about supporting the trans community, there's not really even a department, right, that's working on that specifically. But that community in particular is so marginalized that all departments that are working on poverty related issues would affect that community. So when I'm thinking about all of the interviews that I've done for each of those issues, first I tried to start with background research. And for each of these like sprints, I had a sprint leader, and that person was known as like an expert in the field in some way. For the sprint on literacy, I was the expert in the field, but I also actually brought in literacy specialists to speak with us as well. But I worked on a project called Comprehension in 2019 or 20. And so I did a lot of like, background work on understanding and exploring literacy, thinking about why so many people are illiterate, how tools or people or services could intervene and improve the raw numbers. And really for me, I was interested in looking at like what the learning process looks like. So I feel like I've talked about this before. This is the reason that I started to think about the field of meta learning, or learning how to learn, because I was trying to build a tool that could help students understand the learning process. And there's even a really cool Coursera course that a lot of, I think, like adult learners take. I don't know why I'm thinking Carol Dweck. I don't think that's the name of the woman who created the course, but there's a course called Learning How to Learn. The name of the woman who created the course is escaping me, but it's a really great course that breaks down the way that learning happens in the brain, the way that learning happens over time, how to cement learning, how to gain understanding. And so I was trying to think about in the K through 5 area specifically. I was looking at like kindergarten and first grade, just because I was so early in the project. But yeah, like how that process works, and other leaders in the field and how they are thinking about tools and services that help cement learning, reading specifically. So I talked with owners of the Kumon franchise. I talked with literacy specialists, teachers, parents, and I want to, in this video, talk a little bit about designing user interviews, trying to understand problems or pain points, even when they're not explicitly stated to you. Because if the world was as simple as like a person has a problem, a person understands that they have a problem, and then the person goes and solves that problem, we wouldn't have that many problems, right? Because that's a very straightforward path. But that's usually just not the way that things work. Typically, like in all the sprints that I worked on, there's some problem area that it's pretty like clear that like things aren't working, people are suffering in some way, and some ecosystem could be improved. That part's clear. Now, some things that are unclear are that the people who I identify as like struggling in some way, and the way that I understand that struggle, and the way that they are experiencing that struggle, and what they would even classify as a struggle, those things are different. And like, I can't build a solution for someone else's problem if that other person doesn't see what they have as what I see as a problem. Like, there has to be some cohesion in terms of my understanding and solution of said problem and the person's understanding of that problem and my solution. Like, those things need to mesh. And this is why there's a lot of conversation around how to conduct user interviews, how to synthesize those interviews, how to identify pain points, how to identify gaps. And I want to talk about those gaps for a second. So like, let's say that I'm just actually going to use an example that's not about one of those topic areas, because I love talking about the show Grownish. I just identify so heavily with the main character Zoe, and I'm going to talk about like one of the episodes for a moment. So in one episode in season 3, this is like the most recent season if you weren't up to date. Okay, so Zoe, she gets, this actually might be season 2. I watched them, I didn't know that the new seasons were out, so I actually had to like catch up all at one time. Anyway, in one of the episodes, or maybe it was like a few episodes, she gets caught with her boyfriend in her apartment that her parents are paying for, and her boyfriend has like marijuana in the apartment. Her dad sees the marijuana and the boyfriend and is like, I am not paying for you to go to college and live like this. You're officially cut off. Now this is huge for Zoe, because like Zoe is completely dependent on her parents for like financial support at this point. And so her parents cutting her off means like she needs to figure out some way to like support herself. They also repossess her car. They take the car back to like their home. It gets like rolled right off campus. It was like a whole thing. So overnight she went from kind of completely privileged to kind of like busting suds, right? So she has to get a job. And so initially she, I think she was like working in the kitchen for like a day. That didn't work out. She worked like 3 other places, but she ends up landing at the bookstore because one of her friends is like working at the bookstore and is like, yep, no, we have an open position. So she does like work study. And for Zoe, like, I think this might have been her first job, like proper job. Now, there's a couple ways to look at this, right? Like, Zoe is a student and she's like a fashion like a stylist. So she's interested in like styling and designing like outfits for her clients. So, oh yes, the first job that she got was like actually at a boutique. And the issue that she had there was she wanted to style the mannequins in this like boutique, but the person who was her manager did not want her to style these mannequins. They wanted her to like fold pants. They like, her only job, like she was a very low level associate, and in the design fashion world, actually styling the mannequins is like a more senior level job. So the person who owned the boutique did not feel that she was like ready to do that, and they wanted to take the responsibility to style the mannequins themselves as opposed to her. And she was kind of like, well, no, like I have all of this like styling experience. I'm going to like take initiative. I'm going to fold these pants, and then when I'm done folding the pants, I'm going to go style the mannequin. And that's exactly what she did. She didn't like ask anyone about it. She just did it. When her boss confronted her about like styling the mannequin, it was like a real problem for her boss, and her boss basically like fires her because the boss is like, well, I didn't pay you to style. I'm paying you to fold clothes. And Zoe was like, well, I came here to style. I'm not interested in folding clothes. Right? So there was some disagreement here around like what her actual job responsibilities were. And I am not a fashion student. I'm not a designer, but I want to just like give an outsider's perspective here on how both people could have potentially gotten what they wanted if they were able to like think through the problem here, the pain point, and the solution. So in terms of like Zoe, Zoe needed a job because she's been cut off. So having a job that is even remotely in her industry is like better than not having a job that's in her industry, because like she actually needs the money. Like one of her major pain points is like earning money. So for Zoe, in terms of like Zoe's priorities, keeping the job is really important. Working in the industry that she's interested in, also really important. In terms of this boutique owner, she actually needed someone to fold the clothes. It is very hard to find good entry-level employees anywhere. So just the fact that like Zoe was interested in fashion, interested in styling, she's like also a very stylish like girl, you know, and she was there and she did fold the clothes, but she wanted like more responsibility. So in terms of like this boutique owner, her pain points are just like having a reliable employee, which technically she did, but she had an employee that was more ambitious than the role had space for. And I feel like she might have even felt a little bit intimidated or angry that this junior level employee sought to take on responsibilities that she would deem appropriate for herself as like the owner of the boutique. And so there could be like competition in terms of like the way that she's seeing this new person in the space. If I personally was designing a solution, like some middle ground that would help both of these like personas, I would think about having a conversation with Zoe about growth, because I think that that day, the way that she approached the conversation with her manager did not take into account her own priorities, which are like earning money and earning money in her desired field, and then the opportunity that she has if she sticks around to do what she wants to do. Almost like this concept of like earning your stripes. Like just because I say that I can run 20 miles, does that mean that I actually know how to run 20 miles? No. Anyone can say that they know how to do it, but until you see someone first, you know, maybe run 1 mile, and then 5 miles, and then 10 miles, and then 20 miles, then you're like, okay. And then also if a person runs 20 miles on 3 different occasions, it becomes clear, like this person isn't joking. They really know how to run this many miles, right? Because they've proven themselves over time. And this Zoe got fired on her first day, so she didn't even give the boutique owner the opportunity to like to prove herself or like show her skills or build trust. And I think that it was a very sporadic decision for Zoe to say, I know how to do this, therefore I'm going to do it. And I'm not like, I'm just gonna show that I can do this. And the problem there is things like styling or fashion are subjective. So I could think that I might believe my outfit is so fly, my outfit is perfect, but that doesn't mean that someone else is going to believe that. And so given the boutique owner is the boutique owner, it is actually up to her to decide for the mannequins in her store what looks good, what looks bad, the way that things should operate, because it's her store. It's not Zoe's store. So Zoe's styles and designs in that particular place might not fit. And so one way that Zoe could have like proven herself is to take the time to say like, let me figure out what this owner believes is stylish. Like, let me understand her style, her etiquette, her preferences, and then try to like match that. Even if Zoe doesn't feel like I like these styles, you know, this works for me, she might feel like she might get over time, just by like watching the way that this owner styles her mannequins, she will start to understand, this works, this does not work, this is nice here, this is not nice here, this is the way that things work in this environment. And I think if Zoe would have taken a more long-term exploration of the space, the field, the customs in this new space, then she could have like altered her style for the needs and wants of that that boutique manager. And something else I think to take into account, and I think this boutique owner could have probably benefited a lot from like giving Zoe the benefit of the doubt, because the fact that Zoe was ambitious enough to style the mannequin, it does show interest, right? And so because she went above and beyond the responsibilities that were given to her, and she did fold clothes. She just didn't want to like continue like folding clothes and only folds clothes. The boutique owner could have explained to Zoe that she also has a lot of other responsibilities, including styling, that possibly in the future she might not have the capacity to execute. And when a direct opportunity comes up where she's overwhelmed, there's a potential for Zoe to step in and help her deliver on those responsibilities, because Zoe has the skills, Zoe has shown interest, and Zoe has proven trust in the space. So in this particular case, there's a big communication gap. A communication gap could have saved Zoe her job and could have saved the boutique owner from having to hire a new junior level employee. So I think in this case, both people lost, and both people are kind of like missing out. But life goes on. And something interesting about that is if both of these people don't think about ways that this situation went wrong and try to fix it, in the future, they will actually probably encounter the same situation. Like Zoe might feel like she deserves more responsibility than she's like proven trustworthy and able to accept and execute on, and the boutique owner might continue to lose very stylish and fashionable and interested junior level employees because she like shuts down their dreams. Like she's like a dream killer, and that's negative too. So hopefully both people will like learn from that and be able to design a new process to communicate expectations and opportunities for growth in the future. Now, moving on. So Zoe gets the job at the bookstore. The only point of this job is to like earn enough money to now like pay for her food, her like books, other like little miscellaneous things that she needs, because her parents decide to continue paying her tuition, but they're like, we're not going to pay for anything else. So there's that. Okay, so in this like new job, Zoe is a cash register. She's a what do you call that? A clerk, right? So she's running she's operating the cash register. She is like restocking books. She is like organizing books on the shelf, and she's providing customer service by like speaking with customers, explaining to them where things are in the store. And in a very short clip, they show the differences between like Zoe on her first day and then Zoe about a month in, and that this sort of idea of like building trust, building familiarity with the space actually helps her like do her job better, gain more confidence in the space and really be more effective. But that's something that like happens over time. Yeah. That's so I guess like in this case, unpacking the story of the boutique owner and Zoe as the the entry level store associate, and the ways that sort of like really firing process went wrong, understanding each person's pain points and a palatable solution for both parties. I feel like I am able to articulate what those pain points are from personal experience and identifying gaps. Like Zoe never actually said like, oh, I could have been more patient, because the show is very narrative, so they just like as she's like going through her life in the show, she narrates how she feels and like what she's experiencing. And so she never actually says, oh, I should have stayed at this boutique longer and then proven trust, and then I could have, you know, grown in the field. Like, she doesn't say that at all. But she just like demonstrates this through her next job. And so as like a designer, it's kind of up to you to come to that conclusion, to make that assumption, to like bridge that gap, because a customer will never like tell you that. They typically like never come to those conclusions on their own, and that's your job. And that's really, really hard, because when you're going through a user interview and you're listening to what someone is saying and you're thinking, and then you take notes on what they said and what they did, typically the solution is not going to come from what you wrote down and then like finding a solution to that. The reason that you need to conduct journey maps and stakeholder maps is to identify in that journey map what is missing. What are steps that needed to be here that aren't here? Who are people whose job it is to like do this, but for some reason are not a part of this stakeholder map? And how can we include them here? Like, that is how you like improve a process. That is how you build an effective solution. But that is not really intuitive. There's a lot of reflection that you have to do about a space in order to make those conclusions, in order to understand how to improve a process. And then, even though you might have a belief that a person is not a part of an ecosystem, maybe if you are familiar with ecosystem mapping, and I think I can make a more formal video of what these terms mean, what they are, how they work, and who might be missing in those. And I think what I might actually do is just record like a mural exercise where I like work through that. Yeah, that's what. I'm sorry, I'm just going back for a second, because I was trying to get to the point of making an assumption based on an ecosystem or stakeholder map that you have created, and showing that ecosystem map to more senior people on your team, to really other people on your team, to other people in the ecosystem. It enables you to get some feedback that's really important about validating your assumptions. If you show that map to, say, like your manager, and you explain what you understand, or your team, right, they can give you feedback as to, actually, you didn't include this person in the map. Actually, there's this person who is here that you missed, or you wrote down that like this person does this thing in the ecosystem, but we don't have any evidence that that person actually is doing that. So you actually made an incorrect assumption here. Or you might uncover some process that no one else realized existed, which is great, because now you've like uncovered a problem that other people didn't see, and that's very valuable. So that is something that I feel like I've come across before, just having worked in so many like interdisciplinary teams. But this week, because I went through the design process so many times, and because right now I have so many different solutions that I'm like testing. Right now, my team is testing 32 different solutions with focus groups, and we need to go through this sort of like design process a few times. I've really wanted to explain the way that our current solution testing framework per se is working, and things that I've found are sort of like insights and holes that became really clear and useful for like me to think about and push to the top of my own mental design framework, in case that information is useful for anyone else. So yes, again, this is Olivia. I've been trying to make more video blogs about the type of work that I do, the way that I get my work done, and processes, or I don't know, notable things that like I've realized. And I'm doing these like outside to try to encourage more people to go outside. I have an Instagram page that I run with short clips of me doing very normal things as a Black girl just outside in the world. If you are interested in watching that, I will link that profile in this video. And thank you for watching me. I am inspired by Natalie Tran from the Community Channel, and I actually have some really cool projects and skits and sketches that I'm really excited to share with you. All right.